Initially, it seemed like an ordinary Friday. After putting in extra hours, returning home to an empty house was nothing new as Megan had informed me earlier about her night out with friends. I chose not to reply since we'd been having the same disagreement for weeks now. The issue revolved around her late-night drinking sessions with her unmarried friends, often until who knows what hour, which worried me significantly, especially given her erratic return times and questionable behavior upon arrival. She would mock my concerns by laughing in my face, feigning sweetness, as if I was overreacting. "You're just being dramatic," she would claim, tossing her hair dismissively, insinuating that I lacked understanding. However, this evening, an unsettling feeling washed over me. Whether it was the quiet house or the thick atmosphere that hinted at some impending tension, I couldn't pinpoint. For hours, I remained stationary on the couch, scarcely paying attention to the TV, instead fixating my gaze upon the door. Deep down, I anticipated her arrival around 3 a.m., as usual, yet she never showed up. As time passed and no sign of Megan appeared, I grew concerned. Eventually, I texted asking her location but received no response. When I called, it went straight to voicemail. I tried convincing myself she was just too drunk to answer, but my instincts whispered a different tale. An unsettling feeling crept over me, like I had already foreseen the gravity of the situation, though I wasn't ready to confront it yet. It was close to 6 a.m. when a sound finally echoed, keys clattering outside the door. My heart paused for a moment. Paralyzed on the couch, I couldn't decide whether to rise or remain where I was. The door squeaked open, and there she was, crawling through the doorway on all fours. My wife, Megan, was crawling. Her dress was disheveled, her hair a mess, and she emitted a blend of sweat, alcohol, and a scent that made my stomach churn. Initially, she didn't notice me. She was too busy trying to hoist herself up, one stiletto still on her foot, the other discarded in the hallway. Barely containing my disbelief, this wasn't her usual drunken stumble home, but this time it was more severe. Her eyes were half closed, lips curling into a lopsided grin, as if this was all a joke. "Babe, I made it," she slurred, attempting to stand. However, she couldn't manage and leaned against the doorframe, laughing like a college student on spring break. Anger surged in my throat, but it wasn't just anger. It was the violent fury that emerges when one ignores a truth for too long and it eventually erupts in one's face. I rose, clenching my fists, and she finally noticed me then. For a moment, her expression altered fear or guilt, perhaps flashed across her eyes before being replaced by her customary smirk. "What? Don't look at me like that. I was just out with the girls." "With the girls," I retorted, the words echoing back at her. My voice had turned colder than ever before. "Are you certain about that?" A fleeting expression crossed Megan's face, and I recognized it immediately, the truth I had been trying to ignore for weeks, perhaps months. Her smile wavered. She seemed on the verge of speaking, then hesitated, and in that pause I found my answer. She attempted to rise again, but her legs buckled as if they were unsteady beneath her. Witnessing her struggle, a part of me shattered. I took hold of her arm, helping her stand, though I could not meet her gaze. My mind raced, linking together pieces I wished to ignore. She'd returned home late before, unsteady and jesting, but this time was distinct. She appeared more disheveled than ever, more battered. Taking a step back, I kept my voice soft yet chilly. "Where did you truly go, Megan?" Her eyes blinked rapidly, massaging her temples as if she had a headache, obviously trying to compose herself. The act was almost pathetic. Almost. "I already told you," she replied slowly, stretching out the words as if addressing a child. "I was out with friends at a club, as usual." Yet, she questioned me about it, even though I had called Laura and Rachel. They were home by midnight, but she didn't seem to know that. "Now, let's see if you can provide a more accurate account this time." Her demeanor swiftly changed, the mocking grin disappeared, replaced by a brief flicker of fear before she tried to conceal it. She attempted to brush it off, but her actions gave her away. "All right, perhaps I stayed out later than they did. So what's the issue? You're actually interrogating me about when I returned home." My fingers clenched into fists. She no longer made an attempt to convince me. Instead, she tossed lies my way, expecting me to accept them without question. Megan, cease this unnecessary suspicion. Who were you with? She let out a feeble laugh, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. You're crazy, you realize that. This is crazy. She headed towards the kitchen, unsteadily. Reaching for a glass of water seemed to restore reality, as if she hadn't been wearing another woman's scent or smudged lipstick. As if I couldn't spot the faint imprint on her collarbone, concealed under her hair. Yet, I persisted in trailing behind her. You truly believe I'm oblivious? You think I'll simply stand here and swallow whatever fabrication you present? She spun around then, her gaze sharper, guarded. Just what are you implying? Are you seriously suggesting I've done something wrong? Since you're sounding more like a paranoid lunatic each second. It was at that moment I became certain. Her demeanor, her expression, they were all too calculated, overly practiced. It appeared she had been anticipating this conversation and had prepared responses to counter my suspicions. However, there was something she couldn't conceal, and that was the trembling of her hands as they clung to the countertop edge. Approached cautiously, I whispered softly, sending a shiver through the air. With whom were you associating? She shrugged, chuckling insincerely, yet it lacked sincerity. Good Lord, Mike, what's gotten into you? You need to relax. I told you I was with friends, we overindulged, and now I'm back home. That's it. Nothing more. I moved nearer, maintaining eye contact. Then explain this, I gestured towards her neck, revealing a subtle yet unmistakable bruise concealed beneath her hair. Her eyes flickered briefly before she hid it with her tresses. It's nothing. I must have collided with something at the club. You know how crowded those places can get, don't you? I said, my voice brimming with skepticism. You bumped into something? We stood there, ensnared in an unbearable silence. She endeavored to remain composed, but her facade was beginning to crumble. I noticed the facade crumbling, and that's when I realized. She didn't have to confirm it. I was already aware. Why don't you confess, Megan? I murmured, keeping my voice surprisingly composed. Haven't you been with someone else? Her expression stiffened. This time, she couldn't conceal it. Her mouth parted, but no words emerged. For once, she had no witty comeback, no joke, no fabricated truth. Only silence, and that silence was more potent than any words she could have uttered. That silence echoed the disintegration of everything we had constructed, piece by piece. Megan stood there, fixated on me like a deer in headlights. The defiance vanished from her face, and for the first time that evening, I perceived it. The truth she had been striving to conceal. I chuckled bitterly, shaking my head. There it is. You can't even deny it, can you? She swallowed nervously, scanning the room as if searching for a means of escape. None was available. Unable to escape, she found herself cornered. Gradually, she pressed herself against the counter, folding her arms across her chest. Her lips formed a narrow line. I didn't intend for this predicament, she timidly admitted, her voice quivering, but not from remorse. Instead, it was dread that filled her. Dread of being discovered. Fear of facing the repercussions. Didn't mean for things to unfold like this, I retorted angrily, my words reverberating in the room. What precisely didn't you mean to happen, Megan? The deceit, the secretive behavior, or betraying me with another man while I waited patiently at home? Her expression stiffened at my words as if she had been struck. For a moment, she seemed about to deny it again, but then, she didn't. Instead, she inhaled deeply, sighing as if this was an annoying hassle. Listen, it's not what you imagine, all right. You're overreacting. This left me bewildered, taken aback by her audacity. Are you implying that I'm exaggerating our issues? It seems like you're attempting to manipulate reality right now. She moved away from the counter and approached me, her heels clicking rhythmically on the floor as if asserting control over the situation. Her entire disposition changed. Mike, we've been growing apart for months. You barely acknowledge me anymore. All you seem to do is work, return home, and treat me as if I'm merely present. Were there signs I should have noticed? I found it hard to believe what she was saying, my heart racing. You're placing the blame on me for this? Because I work? That's your justification? You found someone else because I've been distant, is that what you're implying? She sighed, flipping her hair back with a casual motion that made me want to shout. I'm expressing that our relationship hasn't been healthy for quite some time. Perhaps if you gave me more attention, I wouldn't have felt compelled to. Open your legs for another. The words slipped out unintentionally, and I immediately saw the fury in her gaze. However, I no longer cared. I was done with feigning ignorance, done playing the oblivious spouse. The sweetness on her face transformed into something far uglier. You know what? She retorted. Yes, I did. I slept with someone else. Are you content now? You asked for honesty. Here it is. My heart paused. She spoke so casually, as if confessing to taking my car without asking, not admitting the breach of trust. My vision clouded with rage, my chest heaving as I struggled to process her words. She showed no remorse, no pretense of remorse. I moved closer, my voice trembling. Who was it? She evaded my gaze, biting her lip, seemingly deciding how much to reveal. But when she looked back at me, her smirk returned. Does it truly matter? You don't seem to know him, she stated, her tone dismissive and harsh, causing a stir within me. Absolutely, it matters, Megan, I retorted angrily. Who in the world have you been with behind my back? She appraised me, her eyes narrowing. Then, with an unprecedented calmness, she replied, It's Ryan. This revelation sent a shiver through me. It was Ryan, my closest friend, the one who stood by me at our wedding, the constant companion, always ready to assist, always nearby with a foolish grin on his face, maintaining an air of normalcy. I stumbled backwards, clutching the table's edge for balance. Ryan, is it true that you've been intimate with Ryan? The words tasted bitter in my mouth. She appeared nonchalant, as if it were insignificant. It just transpired, she suggested. He actually listens to me, you know? He cares. Unlike you, the sentiment re-emerged. Megan stood there with an arrogant smirk, as if she was expecting me to simply accept her confession. My fists trembled, my body quivered with anger, betrayal, disbelief. Every memory of Ryan at the house, every shared joke and beer, all seemed like lies now. He had been a lie, Megan had been a lie. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, but the rage surging through me was unstoppable. Megan crossed her arms, maintaining her smug expression, waiting for my reaction. She believed she held the upper hand, thought she could control the situation, but she didn't know the half of it. This wasn't over by any means. The room swirled around me. Ryan, my best friend, how many years had you been sleeping with my wife behind my back? How often did you enter my house, sit on my couch, drink beer with me while deceiving me? I couldn't speak for a moment, the fury choking me. Megan stood there, rhythmically tapping her fingers on the counter as if expecting me to continue. As if this was merely a spat we would soon forget. Yet, it seemed she didn't grasp the gravity of what she had revealed. I yearned to jolt her, yell, do anything to erase that smug expression from her face, but all I managed was to stare at her, my heart pounding audibly in my ears. When I regained my voice, it emerged strained, barely a whisper. For how long? Megan showed no sign of discomfort or remorse. Instead, she regarded me as if I had asked a foolish question. Does it make a difference? She replied sarcastically, her voice dripping with contempt. For how long? I asked again, this time more forcefully, moving nearer to her. I could feel my anger rising once more, simmering just beneath my surface. She sighed, as if I was causing her trouble, rolling her eyes. I'm not sure. A few months, perhaps. She cocked her head, gazing into the distance, seeming to remember something. It began following your lengthy business trip. I was left alone and, well, as you might guess, things unfolded. I had to hold myself up against the wall to prevent myself from charging at you. My knuckles were clenched around the table's edge so tightly that it seemed ready to crack. My pulse throbbed in my temples, echoing like a battle drum. A few months? I queried, my voice quivering with astonishment. You've been unfaithful with him for months, and you expected me to keep this secret until I found you returning at 6 a.m., didn't you? She shrugged nonchalantly, implying that I was overreacting. It wasn't something I intentionally set out to do, Mike. It simply transpired. I felt neglected, and Ryan was there. He listens to me, communicates with me. He's not constantly engrossed in his phone or labor. It seems you genuinely concern yourself with my emotions. Her tone turned sharp and accusatory, as though she was attempting to inflict more pain. Given the circumstances, isn't it fair that I feel this way? She questioned, her gaze shifting towards you. You think I'm blaming myself? No, I'm pointing out your actions. You were taken aback, struggling to comprehend her words. Actions? Are you implying that I'm at fault for your affair with my friend? Megan fixed her eyes on yours, momentarily shedding the facade. In a hushed voice, she declared, "You believe yourself to be a victim in all this. You haven't been a husband to me for a long time, Mike. You're hardly ever present. Even when you are, it feels like you're absent. All you focus on is work, your career, and your latest obsession. Meanwhile, I'm left here, questioning if you even see me anymore." And Ryan, she hesitated, a mischievous grin appearing. He noticed me. He stirred emotions within me again. I erupted. I seized the closest object within reach, a glass on the table, and flung it across the room. It smashed against the wall, scattering fragments in all directions. Megan jumped but remained stationary, her eyes popping open with surprise for the first time that evening. "Don't you dare stand there and pretend this is my fault," I bellowed, my voice reverberating through the space. "You made a decision. You had countless other ways to rectify the situation, but you opted to deceive me. You opted to share my bed with him." I was panting, my chest heaving in quick, angry gasps. Megan gazed at the shattered glass on the floor, her lips slightly agape, but she didn't speak up. Perhaps she understood that provoking me further wasn't wise. Perhaps, for once, she was genuinely frightened by what might transpire next. The silence between us became oppressive. Unable to bear her presence any longer, I remained rooted in the room. A nagging doubt haunted me, a question I needed answered. "Do you think he loves you?" I whispered, my voice heavy with dismay. Megan hesitated, folding her arms and tilting her head to one side. "I'm not sure," she replied nonchalantly. "Perhaps. Maybe." He had given such a vague promise. The words struck me like a blow to the stomach. She was unaware. For this man who might love her, she risked our entire marriage trusting him over our friendship for some fleeting affair. I yearned to roar, to shatter more than a glass, to demolish the entire house, mirroring the chaos within me. Yet, I remained motionless, frozen in shock. "You don't even know if he loves you," I murmured, shaking my head in disbelief. "And for that, you cast aside everything we built together." She didn't respond. Standing there, she gazed at the floor, her arms hugged tightly around herself, a chilling realization of her own decisions creeping over her. The combined force of deceit, betrayal, and discovering the woman I adored, the one I trusted implicitly, had discarded everything for naught for him struck me all at once. I struggled to comprehend it fully. My mind was devoid yet teeming with fury. A final glance at her revealed a stranger. "I can't stay," I murmured, turning to exit the room and the house. "Where are you going?" Megan called out, her voice displaying panic for the first time that night. Perhaps she finally understood I wouldn't stand idly by any longer. But I remained silent. I departed from that room, the house, slamming the door shut, the sound of shattered glass reverberating in my ears, a duration I can't determine, possibly an hour, perhaps 3. Scarcely noticing the road with streetlights flickering by like shattered recollections, I gripped the steering wheel tightly, my hands trembling. My consciousness was a swirl of pictures: Megan's mocking smile, Ryan's face as he joked with me, her returning home late, reeking of someone else. It all swirled around me like a tempest I couldn't evade. Eventually, I pulled into an abandoned parking lot. The quiet out there was stifling yet liberating, since it wasn't filled with her voice, her deceit. I shut off the engine and leaned back in my seat, trying to gather my breath. My chest felt weighed down, as if someone had attached weights to my ribs and was gradually tightening a noose. I groped for my phone, my fingers quivering as I scrolled through the contacts. I hesitated over Ryan's name, my thumb trembling. I couldn't believe I had been so oblivious. How many times had he been in my house, seated at the table, sipping my beer, feigning normalcy, while he was betraying me with Megan behind my back. My gut nodded, yet I still pressed the call button. 2 rings later, he answered, his tone overly relaxed given the circumstances. "Hey Mike, what's up? It's early, everything good?" His voice triggered a wave of queasiness, but I managed to keep my own tone even. "Ryan," I uttered, struggling not to crack. A heavy silence ensued, the kind that's as oppressive as the calm before a storm. I could hear his breaths, yet he remained silent for a while. I waited, hoping he would either admit it or deny it. But he wasn't dumb, he knew what I was referring to. When he spoke, his voice was soft, almost cautious. "Mike, man, I don't understand what you're saying. Cut the bullsh asterisk T. Ryan," I retorted, my voice harsher than intended. "I know about you and Megan. I know everything." More silence followed. This time, the silence lasted longer, as if he was scrambling for an answer. "Mike, here's the thing, how long?" I interrupted him before he could evade the question. "I needed to know how long you've been with her." He sighed, his breath heavy with guilt, but there was also relief, as if he felt it was now out in the open. "A few months," he confessed, speaking softly. It seemed like a casual admission of a traffic ticket infraction. It wasn't a total betrayal of our friendship. I interjected again, my voice shaking with anger. "Don't try to blame this on an accident. You don't accidentally end up in bed with your best friend's wife." He fell silent, breathing heavily on the other end, likely searching for words that could make this right. But nothing, he said, could rectify this situation. Nothing could reverse the fact that the 2 people I trusted had deceived me for months and carried on as if everything was normal. "Have you fallen in love with her?" I eventually inquired, my voice echoing. The reason for my curiosity eluded me. Perhaps it was a need to gauge the extent of this deception. Was it merely desire, or did he aim to take her from me completely? There was a pause from Ryan, and I could almost sense him struggling with his response, unsure of what to disclose. I'm not sure, Mike. Perhaps. We never discussed it in those terms." My laughter echoed, hollow and void. "You're unsure. Incredible. You've been engaging in an affair with my wife for months, and you don't know if you're in love with her. What's wrong with you?" He remained silent. What could he possibly say to rectify this? There were no words that could mend the situation. I clutched the steering wheel harder, the leather groaning beneath my grip. "You should have told me, Ryan. You should have been honest. If you desired her, and she desired you, you should have openly expressed this instead of acting like timid cowards hiding in the shadows." "I'm sorry, Mike," he eventually murmured, but it was too late for remorse. The phone hit the passenger seat as I ended the call, feeling its heat on my hand. His apology echoed in my mind, but it made no difference. He wasn't regretful for his actions. He was remorseful for getting caught. I sat there, staring vacantly at the vacant lot, the burden of everything weighing heavier than ever. The rage, the deceit, the despair all churning within me like a tempest, and I didn't know which direction to go. I yearned to shout, to damage something, to demolish the entire world, because nothing seemed sensible anymore. Everything I believed in, my marriage, my companionship, it was all fabricated. I clenched the steering wheel, my knuckles turning pale, attempting to still the turmoil within me. The agitation couldn't be quelled. This wasn't a matter I could dismiss or solve with casual words. It was an act of treachery that left indelible marks, wounds that wouldn't mend. I didn't notice my tears beginning until I felt the salty taste on my lips. I wasn't crying for her or Ryan. I was crying for the life I believed in, the future I lost, shredded in a few short hours. Now, alone in the dark, I had to make a tough decision: remain and struggle for something that was beyond revival, or depart forever and turn my back. However, regardless of what I chose, one thing remained certain. My life, a life I thought I knew so intimately, had reached its end. There was no returning to the past, no going back to how things were. I couldn't return home immediately. The idea of re-entering that house, encountering her again, detecting his cologne on her skin, it was like stepping into a crime scene where the corpse still bore warmth. My universe crumbled, leaving me dumbfounded at being merely a prop in their tale. Driving aimlessly, I ignored my surroundings. My phone vibrated occasionally. It was Megan, no doubt. I chose not to respond. What could she possibly convey that would mend this torment? I held no regard for her apologies, excuses, or explanations. Nothing could compensate for what she had wrought. As for Ryan, he was a phantom now. His words reverberated within me. I didn't intend for it to transpire, Mike. This phrase resonated ominously, like an unpleasant jest. Eventually, I found myself home, not out of desire, but due to lack of alternatives. Upon pulling into the driveway, I spotted the living room light on, Megan's shadow dancing within, anxiously waiting. In the car, I remained for a moment, tightly clutching the steering wheel, attempting to muster whatever fortitude was left. This wasn't intended as a discussion, it was impending conflict. Upon entering, the atmosphere felt heavy, as if the house sensed the impending storm. Megan swiftly looked up at my arrival, her face a tumult of guilt and annoyance. She had swapped her club attire for one of her oversized sweaters, worn when she attempted to feign innocence. Her makeup had been removed, yet traces of her night's escapades remained etched on her skin in the form of smudges. "Where have you been?" she inquired, her voice strained, implying I was at fault. I chose to disregard the question, proceeding instead into the living room to create a buffer zone, wanting to avoid any actions I might later regret. She pursued me, her heels clicking rhythmically against the hardwood floor, the echoes amplified in the silence. "Mike, we need to discuss this." Upon turning so swiftly, she took an involuntary step back. "Are you ready to discuss now?" A hint of irritation flashed in her eyes, but she swiftly concealed it with her usual feigned concern. "I understand you're upset. I get it, but if we're going to resolve this, let's do it." I interrupted, my laughter tinged with bitterness. "Do you truly believe we can resolve this? You've been involved with my best friend for months, and you think we can patch things up and pretend nothing happened?" She folded her arms, the facade briefly slipping, revealing the genuine Megan. "Listen, you haven't exactly been a model husband. You're always busy, always preoccupied. What did you expect me to do, Mike? Just sit around while you ignored me? I needed more. That was the last straw." I advanced towards her, my voice trembling with anger. "So you turned to Ryan, my best friend. You thought he was the solution to your problems, and you think that makes this okay? You believe this is my fault?" She remained unfazed, instead standing taller with her gaze hardening. "Perhaps if you had been more of a partner, I wouldn't have felt compelled to seek solace elsewhere." The gall, the sheer audacity, I was left speechless for a moment. My thoughts whirling as she so effortlessly shifted the blame. "Compelled? You resorted to cheating? That's your justification?" She grew agitated, her hands flying up. "I'm not condoning it, Mike, but you left me with no alternative. I was desolate and Ryan, he was near." I growled, advancing towards her. "Don't you dare invoke his name as if he's some knight in your pitiful tale. He's scum, just like you." She seemed about to retort, but I cut in, "Not finished yet. I've strived tirelessly to give us a life, to create something together. And what do? You squander it all because you desired more. Are you listening to yourself at this moment?" For once, she couldn't conjure an immediate reply. The habitual sharp retort, the taunting grin, vanished. She began to comprehend that I wouldn't yield, wouldn't accept her hollow explanations. "I relied on you," I said, my voice now hushed yet brimming with more malice than before. "I relied on you completely. I placed you above everything, and this is the payback I receive. Deceit, treachery." Her gaze softened, and she tried to grasp me, but I retreated, beyond her reach. "Mike, I never meant to injure you. I halted her with a hand, silencing her. "Just stop. You aren't allowed to feign victimhood here, not after what you've perpetrated." A long pause ensued between us, dense and oppressive, until she resumed speaking, her voice low, almost pleading. "Then, what next? What do we do?" I regarded her, the woman I had thought was known to me, the woman I pledged a lifetime with, and all I sensed was emptiness. There was nothing left. She had destroyed everything. "What do we do now?" I asked, shaking my head. "We don't repair this. There's nothing to fix anymore. You ensured that. Her eyes grew wide with panic. You can't possibly mean I'm saying it's over, Megan, I replied coldly. Take your things and go live with him if you want. You made your decision, and now you must deal with the consequences. She looked stunned, her mouth gaping as she processed my words. You can't be serious. You can't just walk away from everything. I let out a hollow laugh. Walk away? You were the one who destroyed everything. All I'm doing is tidying up the mess. For the first time that night, fear was evident in her eyes. Her bravado vanished, replaced by acceptance of her defeat. She had gone too far, and there was no going back now. Mike, she implored tearfully, let's find a way past this. She promised to end things with Ryan, to make any necessary sacrifices, but she no longer cared. Her words were hollow, echoing our dying marriage. I was finished. I'm filing for divorce, I declared. The sentence hung heavy in the air, like a fatal verdict. As far as I'm concerned, you two are made for each other. Megan's face contorted, and for a brief moment, I thought she might weep. But I didn't linger to witness it. I strode towards the door, heart racing, mind whirling with countless thoughts. One fact was indisputable. This was the end. I wouldn't look back. With a forceful slam, I shut the door behind me, the resounding echo a harsh reminder. For a second, I stood outside, gazing into the darkness, trying to regain my composure. It all felt unreal, as if I were observing my life from afar. However, it wasn't a dream. Instead, reality persisted. My pocket vibrated with my phone once more. I recognized it as Megan, perhaps attempting to regain control, but I paid her no heed. I wouldn't let her continue spinning her deceptions. This wasn't a discussion or an argument we could conveniently overlook. It was finished. I slid into the car and remained there, my knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel, staring vacantly at the dashboard. The burden of everything descended upon me like a sledgehammer, the full impact of what had just transpired falling heavy and immediate. I had ended my marriage. The quiet in the car seemed deafening, oppressive. I couldn't endure it any longer, couldn't bear the solitude of my thoughts. I needed escape, needed to clear my mind, but nowhere felt like home now, not after what she had done. My phone buzzed again, and this time I looked at the screen. It wasn't Megan. Instead, it was Ryan. Seeing his name appear on my screen ignited my anger anew. I had severed ties with him after our phone call, but evidently he wasn't done talking. I found myself fixated on the ignore button, yet a part of me felt compelled to listen to what he had to say. Ignoring it seemed the wisest course, but I couldn't shake off this inexplicable need to hear him out. So I responded. For a brief moment, there was an eerie silence from his end, followed by his voice, strained and anxious. Mike, old buddy, though you likely don't want to hear it now, I must speak with you. Can we talk? My voice echoed back, laced with disbelief. What on earth could you possibly say that would rectify any of this, Ryan? He exhaled audibly, and I sensed the weariness in his tone. I admit I messed up, Mike. I acknowledge it. I acknowledge the damage is done, but I never intended it to escalate this much, you said. That's your defense? I retorted sharply, my voice escalating. You didn't mean for it to occur. You've been with Megan for months, and you expect me to believe it just happened? As if you accidentally stumbled into my wife's bed. He responded hastily, his voice panicked. I understand, okay? I know how it appears, but it wasn't like that. It wasn't premeditated. We never intended to hurt you. I chuckled, yet the laughter held no mirth. It was a laughter that echoes when one has been driven to such extremes, emotions become unfamiliar. You didn't intend to hurt me. You didn't intend to hurt me, I repeated, my voice seething with fury. Ryan, you betrayed me in the most despicable manner, and all along, you acted as if we were the best of friends. How could you do this? There was a momentary silence, and for an instant, I thought he might crack under the weight of his guilt. I don't know, man, he murmured, his voice trembling. I don't know. It just happened. I didn't desire to feel this anguish, yet you, Megan, dare not evoke King's name with such ease, I growled. Stop attempting to justify this as a romance. You were well aware of your actions. Both of you were. Ryan remained quiet, and the silence expanded like a chasm between us. I could hear his breaths on the other end, but there were no more words he could hurl at me. There was no excuse, no apology that could undo what he had done. I want you out of my life, I stated coldly in the end. I never wish to see you again, and if you even think about approaching me or explaining yourself once more, by God, I swear it. Ryan's breath hitched, and I could almost feel his fear. Mike, please don't, but I ended the call before he finished, tossing the phone onto the passenger seat as though it were contaminated. My heart pounded in my chest, my hands quivered on the steering wheel. Buried anger and hurt from the betrayal, which felt like an unquenchable wildfire, gnawed at me. For years, I relied on him, welcomed him into my life and home. I confided in him, sharing my deepest secrets, triumphs, and setbacks. Yet, he deceived me, stealing from me, all while maintaining a friendly facade as he struck me behind my back. Starting the car, I drove away from the driveway, the engine's roar echoing through the silence. I was uncertain of my destination, but one fact was clear: I wouldn't return, not to that house, not to Megan, not to the life I believed I had constructed. For hours, I aimlessly drove through the night as dawn approached, while the streets around me remained quiet and empty, a reflection of the turmoil raging within me. My thoughts kept circling back to the same questions. How could they? And how could I have been so oblivious? There were no solutions. Only an unending road lay ahead, providing no solace. Eventually, I parked in a motel lot, too drained to continue driving. The neon light hummed above, casting a sickly light upon the broken pavement. It wasn't lavish, but it sufficed. I needed a respite, a space to accommodate the burden of everything. I booked a room, the musty air greeting me as soon as I entered. I didn't mind. I fell onto the bed, gazing at the ceiling, the happenings of the night playing like a looped movie in my thoughts. Megan's arrogant visage, Ryan's voice appealing for pardon. It all merged, a nightmare I couldn't escape. I attempted to shut my eyes, but rest eluded me. The adrenaline surged within me, keeping me awake, my mind reliving every instance, every deception. I pondered over Megan's words, her attempt to shift blame onto me for her infidelity, her feigning innocence as if she was not responsible. Similarly, Ryan's excuse that he had no control over his actions when it came to the betrayal. They were a match, that much was evident. But I deserved more than them. I wasn't certain about my future or how I would mend the shattered fragments of my life. However, one fact remained undeniable. I was done with both of them. The past was over. Now it was time to find out what lay ahead. I awoke to sunlight streaming through the motel curtain's gaps. My head pulsed, the weight of events settling in my chest like a boulder. For a brief moment, I gazed at the cracked ceiling, questioning if this was all some macabre illusion. But the harsh truth became apparent. Megan had been unfaithful, Ryan betrayed me, and my world crumbled. Gradually rising up, I felt as if decades had passed since yesterday due to the rigidity in my muscles. My phone, previously vibrating on the bedside table, now lay quiet. Yet upon picking it up, the display illuminated with a flurry of missed calls and messages from Megan. Her relentless attempts to contact me during the night had been futile, as I chose not to read her texts. Whatever she had to say no longer held significance. I flung the phone back onto the bed and headed towards the modest bathroom. I splashed cold water on my face, hoping to dispel the weariness, the betrayal, the fury. However, no matter how much I washed my skin, I couldn't shake off the sensation of emotional filth. Not physically unclean, but emotionally tainted. My life, my marriage, my friendships, they all seemed defiled now, as if I were navigating through the ruins of what I had believed to be true. The figure in the mirror bore little resemblance to me. The man looking back was hollow, his eyes red from sleeplessness, his jaw clenched with anger still lingering. Yet, there was an unusual tranquility too. Perhaps it was the understanding that I had weathered the most severe part. Maybe it was recognizing that I had chosen wisely, leaving her them. Whatever it was, it fortified me. I resumed my spot on the bed and picked up my phone once more. This time, I perused Megan's messages. Numerous ones appeared, each one more frantic than the previous. Mike, urgently, we need to discuss. I can clarify everything. Just return home. I'm sorry. Okay? I erred. Let's rectify this. You can't simply depart like this. We must address it. Don't do this. I remained silent, unable to respond. What could I say? That I was prepared to forgive her. That I would overlook what she and Ryan did and resume the pretense that all was well? No, that was unattainable. There was no returning. Not after discovering the true nature of the person she turned out to be. For a prolonged period, I remained seated, scrutinizing her texts, my digits hovering above the screen, yet unable to type. Our lives were intertwined for so long, our efforts poured into our shared endeavors, and yet it seemed as if everything we had was a sham, an illusion disintegrating under the burden of her deceit. It felt like a lie, crumbling beneath the weight of her infidelity. I eventually relinquished the phone and rose from my seat. The room had become unbearable. I required fresh air, needed to free my mind. I exited the motel, stepping into the parking lot where the morning sun glared mercilessly at me. The world beyond felt detached, as though it had progressed while I was confined within my personal purgatory. For a while, I wandered aimlessly, my thoughts spinning around the same query over and over. What next? My consciousness repeatedly returned to the life I believed we were constructing together with Megan. We harbored aspirations, children, a house, holidays, all the dreams that couples are supposed to nurture. Now, everything was annihilated. Every vision I had for the future crumbled in a single night. My phone buzzed once more, revealing Ryan as the caller. Pausing mid-stride on the sidewalk, my heart raced as I read his name. How audacious of him to call me. The fury returned, a warmth rising within me, yet I didn't pick up. Instead, I let it ring, the discordant tone piercing the serene morning quietude. When the ringing ceased, a notification for a voicemail appeared. After a brief pause, I pressed play, holding my phone to my ear. Michael, I realize you're furious. I don't blame you, but please listen. I apologize, understand. I acknowledge that this won't undo anything, but I need you to understand that I never intended for any of this to transpire. It spiraled out of control. Megan and I made mistakes, but don't abandon everything over this. We've been friends for years, man. Don't let it end this way. I discarded the message without a second thought. There was no point in communicating with him anymore. He was no longer my friend. He had become a specter, a haunting reminder of the deceit I would never forget. Continuing to walk aimlessly, I knew only that I required space from her, from him, from the life I believed I had. The answers weren't clear yet, but one truth was evident. I wouldn't let them pull me under. Upon my return to the motel, I had made a decision. I wouldn't linger in this misery any longer. No more waiting for apologies or falsehoods. It was time to advance, to restart, even if it meant setting everything ablaze and departing from the ashes. Once more, I grasped my phone and penned a solitary message to Megan. Do not reach out to me again. I'll be sending divorce papers. With that, I barred her number. It wasn't a triumph. It didn't feel like one. Taking that initial stride marked the recovery of my existence, distancing me from them. In that motel room, as I gazed out the window at the sun's ascent, a truth dawned on me. This was the termination of an old life, but also the genesis of something unfamiliar. For the first time in months, possibly years, I could sense the freedom to breathe anew.